There is a strange pattern that repeats itself in your life. You meet someone wonderful, someone who treats you well, someone who shows up consistently, respects your boundaries, and genuinely cares about your well-being. And just when things start to feel safe, something shifts inside you. A quiet voice begins to whisper, "Something is wrong. This feels too easy. This cannot be real." And before you fully understand what is happening, you find yourself creating distance. You pick a fight over something small. You become cold without meaning to. You start noticing flaws that never bothered you before. You pull away. And then you tell yourself it was never meant to be. But what if the problem was never them? What if the person you are running from is actually yourself? Carl Jung, one of the most profound psychologists of the 20th century, believed that our relationships often reveal what we are unwilling to face within ourselves. He suggested that we project our unresolved conflicts onto others, and we sabotage healthy connections because intimacy threatens the carefully constructed identity we have built. In other words, your ego is terrified of what real love asks you to become. Today, I want to share with you 3 psychological patterns that cause you to destroy healthy love without even realizing it. The second one may surprise you more than you expect, because it is not about what they do wrong. It is about what you are afraid to see in yourself. Let us begin with the first reason. Message 1: You are afraid of losing your identity. When you enter a deep relationship, something fundamental shifts inside you. Your routines change. Your priorities adjust. Your emotional world becomes intertwined with another person. And for many people, this feels less like love and more like a threat. Jung wrote extensively about the ego, which he described as the center of conscious identity. The ego is responsible for maintaining a stable sense of who you are. It creates the story you tell yourself about your life. It holds together the narrative that gives you a sense of continuity and purpose. And here is the challenge. When love enters, the ego often feels like it is being asked to surrender control. It senses that its carefully built structure is being challenged. And instead of welcoming the growth, it resists. It fights to preserve the familiar version of yourself, even if that version is lonely, guarded, or unfulfilled. Think about this honestly. Have you ever felt a sense of relief after ending a relationship that was actually good? Not because it was toxic, but because you could return to your old routines. You could stop being emotionally available. You could retreat back into your comfort zone. You could stop answering questions about your day or explaining your feelings. You could just exist without having to show anyone your inner world. That relief is not a sign that the relationship was wrong. It is often a sign that your ego was overwhelmed by the change intimacy demanded. Jung believed that the ego must eventually make space for the self, the larger, more complete version of who you are. But the ego resists this expansion because it fears dissolution. It fears that if it lets go of control, it will disappear entirely. It does not know that surrendering to love is not losing yourself. It is becoming more of who you are meant to be. It is shedding the layers of protection that were never really protecting you anyway. They were just keeping you small. And here is something else worth considering. When you resist change in a relationship, you are often resisting the person you could become. The version of you that is brave enough to be vulnerable. The version of you that trusts. The version of you that believes in something lasting. That version feels unfamiliar, and the ego prefers what it knows. But here is where the pattern becomes more complex. Because there is a second reason you sabotage love, and this one may be harder to hear. Message 2: You are addicted to familiar emotional pain. This may sound strange at first. Who would be addicted to pain? But psychology teaches us that the mind is drawn to what is familiar, even when what is familiar is destructive. Jung spoke about this through the concept of the shadow, the unconscious part of the psyche that contains everything we have rejected, repressed, or denied about ourselves. The shadow is not evil. It is simply the part of us we have pushed away because it felt unacceptable. And when we avoid it, it grows stronger. It begins to influence our behavior without our awareness. When you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, inconsistent, or absent, your nervous system learned to expect that pattern. It adapted. It built defenses around the belief that love is unreliable. It learned to anticipate disappointment. And when someone comes along who offers consistent, unconditional care, your system does not recognize it as safe. It recognizes it as foreign. And it reacts with suspicion, anxiety, and a deep urge to escape. This is why many people find themselves repeatedly drawn to partners who are emotionally unavailable. Not because they enjoy the pain, but because that pain is familiar. It feels predictable. It feels like home in a strange way. And predictable pain is easier to tolerate than unpredictable peace. Consider this scenario. You meet someone who is kind, consistent, and emotionally available. They do not play games. They do not leave you guessing. They text back. They show up. They remember what you told them. But instead of feeling grateful, you feel restless. You start looking for hidden motives. You tell yourself they must want something from you. You start questioning their sincerity. You wonder why they are so interested in you. You look for flaws, for red flags, for any reason to believe this is not real. And eventually, you push them away. Then you find yourself drawn to someone who is distant, unpredictable, or even dismissive. Someone who keeps you guessing. Someone who makes you feel like you have to earn their attention. And you tell yourself that this feels more real. That this has more passion. That this is what love is supposed to feel like. That is not love. That is your shadow seeking its comfort zone. That is your unconscious mind recreating a familiar environment, even if that environment is painful. Because pain is predictable. And predictability feels safe to a nervous system that learned to survive in chaos. Jung famously wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What he meant is that these patterns will repeat endlessly until you bring them into awareness. Until you stop and ask yourself why you keep choosing the same kind of person. Why you keep ending up in the same painful dynamics. Why you feel more comfortable in relationships that hurt than in relationships that heal. The addiction to familiar pain is not your fault. But it is your responsibility to heal. It is your responsibility to recognize the pattern and choose differently. And this brings us to the third reason. Message 3. You do not believe you deserve love. This is the deepest wound of all. Beneath the fear of losing yourself and the addiction to familiar pain lies a belief that you are fundamentally unworthy of genuine love. This belief often forms early in life. It develops when you receive messages, sometimes subtle, sometimes explicit, that you are too much, not enough, too difficult, or too broken. These messages can come from parents, from peers, from experiences of rejection or failure. Over time, you internalize these messages. They become part of your identity. They become the lens through which you see yourself. And you carry them into every relationship. Jung described the persona as the mask we wear to present ourselves to the world. It is the version of ourselves we show to others to gain approval and avoid rejection. But when you believe you are unworthy, the mask becomes a shield. You hide your true self because you fear that if anyone truly sees you, they will reject you. You perform a version of yourself that you think is acceptable, and you never allow anyone close enough to see the parts of you that feel shame, fear, or inadequacy. And here is the irony. You may attract love, but you will not allow it to stay, because love that stays requires vulnerability. And vulnerability requires you to believe that you are worth knowing. It requires you to believe that your true self is not something to hide, but something to share. When someone loves you consistently, it contradicts your deep belief that you are unlovable. This creates an internal conflict that feels unbearable. Your mind cannot hold both beliefs at the same time. So you reject them before they can reject you. You create distance to protect yourself from a wound that is already there. You find reasons to end it. You convince yourself they were not right for you, and in doing so, you confirm the belief that love does not last. You prove yourself right, but you also prove yourself alone. Jung believed that healing begins when we stop projecting our inner wounds onto others and instead turn inward to confront them. He wrote that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But acceptance is the only path to freedom. Acceptance does not mean you stop growing. It means you stop fighting yourself. It means you recognize that your flaws do not make you unworthy. They make you human. It means you understand that the shadow is not something to destroy, but something to integrate. Let me pause here and offer a different perspective. Many people in your situation carry guilt from past relationships. They feel they have hurt others or been hurt themselves. They replay old mistakes in their minds and wonder if they will ever get it right, and they carry that weight into new connections. This guilt often shows up as hesitation or fear. It shows up as the belief that you need to be perfect before you can be loved. But acknowledging your past without letting it define your future is an important step toward healing. There is no shame in seeking growth. Growth is part of being human. So what do you do with this awareness? How do you stop the cycle? The first step is to stop running. You must sit with the discomfort that arises when love feels safe. Notice the urge to pull away. Notice the voice that tells you something is wrong. But instead of acting on it, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself what you are truly afraid of. Are you afraid of being hurt? Are you afraid of losing yourself? Are you afraid that you do not deserve this? Whatever the answer, acknowledge it without judgment. The second step is to practice staying present in the relationship. This means resisting the temptation to escalate conflict when you feel overwhelmed. It means communicating your fears instead of acting on them. It means saying I am scared instead of pushing them away. And it means allowing yourself to receive love, even when it feels foreign, even when your mind tells you it will not last, even when you feel like you do not deserve it. Jung believed that the process of individuation, integrating all parts of the self, requires courage. It takes courage to let someone see you fully. It takes courage to believe you are enough. It takes courage to stay when every instinct tells you to run. The third step is to forgive yourself. You are not broken for having these patterns. You are human. The fact that you are here, seeking understanding, shows that you are already healing. The shadow is not your enemy. It is a part of you that needs compassion. When you reject your shadow, you reject yourself. When you embrace it, you become whole. Let me share something important. Many people in this situation believe they are protecting themselves by keeping love at a distance. They believe that if they do not let anyone too close, they will not get hurt. But the protection is an illusion. The walls you build to keep out pain also keep out connection. They keep out joy. They keep out the very thing your heart longs for. And the cost of this protection is loneliness. It is a high price to pay. Healing requires you to lower the walls, not all at once, but brick by brick. It requires you to trust that not everyone will leave. Not everyone is a threat. And it requires you to believe that you are worthy of love not because you are perfect, but because you are human. Jung wrote that the shoe that fits one person pinches another. Your path to healing will not look like anyone else's. There is no formula. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. But the starting point is always the same: honest self-reflection, and the willingness to be uncomfortable in service of growth. Now I want to leave you with a question. This question has no easy answer, but it is a question worth sitting with. What would happen if you stopped running? What would happen if you allowed yourself to receive the love you have always wanted? What would happen if you believed you were enough, not someday, but right now? I cannot answer that for you, but I can tell you this: the love you are seeking is not outside of you. It is waiting for you to recognize it within yourself. And when you do, you will stop sabotaging what is good. You will stop running from what is real. and you will finally allow love to stay. Thank you for listening. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who might be carrying the same burden. Sometimes the right words at the right time can change everything. And if you are ready to continue this journey of self-discovery, subscribe to Mindful Insights and turn on notifications. Because understanding yourself is the first step toward a life of meaning and connection. The cycle can end. The cycle does end, but only when you choose to stop running.